Hi, Michele Shalin with Mindful Transformation. I'm going to talk about fears, embracing your fears. I know that's like a really scary idea, right? Like, kind of like an oxymoron, like embracing your fears, hugging them. Is this going to make them bigger? I don't like this idea. I want to run from them. I don't feel good with these fears. I don't want you to. But that's what we're taught, right? Like to run from them. Like don't talk about them. Don't think about them. Pretend they're not there. Push them down. It's a weakness, if you feel fear. That's what a lot of us are taught, and it causes a lot of problems, a lot of emotional problems that people start to run to distracting themselves, using behaviors, things that can turn into, serious addictions. There's so many things you can pick to be obsessive about, even good things like, exercise or maybe, work in good balance, drugs, alcohol, social networking, gambling, shopping, eating, et cetera, et cetera. The list goes on. And I believe a lot of these addictions and behaviors that turn into addictions surface because people have not been taught well how to process emotions that are difficult, and fear being one of the most difficult emotions we deal with. And so if we're not taught to deal with them, we just instinctually try to get relief in some way. The problem is when the culture doesn't permit you to talk about it and it's a taboo subject, then people suffer alone and a lot of these behaviors and problems start to surface. Now, I'm not talking about the fear that's necessary for survival, okay? We need the emotion of fear. It is, an emotion that tells we feel when we feel threatened, when we're in danger, and we take action and we save ourselves and survive. This is essential, of course, and this is not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the fake fear. The fear in our imagination, it's fake. And we make up things about what we think is going to happen in the future, or, what for sure is going to happen in the future. And we get all wound up and caught up, and we don't know how to process it. And we start to feel bad physically and emotionally, and we try to escape from it because we don't understand it. No one's ever taught us how to deal with it, okay? That's the stuff I'm talking about. That's the kind of stuff, the fake fear that we make up, we can learn to have control over that more. And we can learn how to process the emotions better. So they come off, they're like, it's not a monkey on your back anymore. And also learn how to control your thinking in the future, so it doesn't get there with the fear, where you start adding stories onto it and making it scarier, okay? So you learn how to control your thoughts more, so you don't become real fearful. And when you already have fear that you need to process that you haven't dealt with, you'll be able to do that as well. And there's a lot of different techniques that are really helpful in doing this. And I'm going to go into like 2 essential ones that are very, very important later. So, you have these addictions that people can, I got notes to keep myself on track here. You have these addictions that people end up, having. And fear is something that people are afraid to talk about because a lot of people think it's weak and that you should just be able to handle it and, not talk about it. But, it kind of falls into the same category of taboo subjects like shame or death, suicide, sex. These are all subjects that subjects and feelings, experiences that a lot of people don't want to talk about, but they're human feelings and experiences. And if we have, as a culture, don't permit people to talk about it, then when they have problems, they don't know what to do, and they suffer silently with them, and then it comes out in different areas, like these behaviors with, addictions and stuff. Okay. So this is why it's so important to learn how to do this. So what happens when the culture doesn't permit you to talk about it, but you feel it, it's real. You have anxiety, you have fear, and you're trying, you don't know how to deal with it. And you start to think that there's something wrong with you, why am I feeling this way? Why am I not handling it good? Everybody else seems to be doing better than me, and I have to act. But you don't know that a lot of these other people are experiencing a lot of the same feelings. They're, have that feeling in their stomach where they're nervous or anxious, nervous, fearful, whatever you want to call it. Everybody knows that feeling, and we get it throughout the day. And some people have it all the time. I had it with me most of my life until I learned to understand why it was happening more, and then I learned techniques and tools to manage it and help me learn how to deal with it better and not have so many problems around it. So one of the things you have to do is to learn how to permit yourself to be vulnerable, because you have to be vulnerable to embrace the fear. You have to open yourself up and listen and go, okay, what are you trying to tell me? What's the lesson I'm supposed to learn? You have to be able to do this, okay? So I want to talk about vulnerability a little bit. When I ask you if you're vulnerable, if you would be vulnerable, would you think that means you would be weak and you don't want to do that because maybe you're afraid of being exposed or being hurt and not protected? Is that vulnerability weak for you? A lot of people would answer yes to this, but when you look at someone else doing something, maybe they've created something new. It's maybe a piece of art, an invention. Maybe they're speaking up against a group that's saying something different than they are. Maybe they're giving a presentation. Maybe whatever. You see people taking a risk and going out in front of people, expressing their views, or showing something, a part of them that they created. That if they created it, it's a part of them. And would you think they were weak? Not usually. Most people would answer no. That person's brave or courageous or whatever. Okay. So it's really interesting to see the difference we have in our definition of vulnerability when we're vulnerable, weak, or when someone else puts themselves out there and stands up and is seen. We think, wow, they're brave and they're courageous. So there's a really great TED Talk by a very talented woman called Brene Brown. If you don't already know of her, I would highly recommend you looking anything up she's done. She's written many books. She's an author. She's a researcher. She's a social worker, a therapist, an author, a lecturer. And she had this TED Talk called The Power of Vulnerability. And she talks about this, the definitions we have for ourselves and for the other person. And this video went viral, 13 million plus views. I can't remember. It's incredible. And she became famous right afterwards, immediately. And everybody wanted to talk to her. And she was writing all these books. And even Netflix, you can see a special on vulnerability, Brene Brown. And you'll see, the special about it. It was incredible. And I'm a big fan of quotes. I collect quotes when they're very powerful for me, and I'll put them up in my room sometimes, or I'll share them on social networking or with my clients. And one of my favorite quotes in her talk, she says, vulnerability is our most accurate measure of courage. And yeah, I agree. It's great. Vulnerability is the most accurate measure of our courage, because when you put yourself out there, it takes a lot of courage. And the benefits are amazing. but I can definitely see this in my life for sure. Now, okay, so you have to be vulnerable when you're facing a fear. To go, okay, tell me, what do you got to say to me? What's the lesson I'm supposed to learn and all that? But inviting compassion and love into the equation is the other big ingredient, necessary ingredient. And Liz Gilbert, the author of Eat, Pray, Love, and quite a few other books, but that's the one I know. And she's a wonderful lecturer. And she did a recent talk called Facing Fear with a Compassionate Heart. And I heard it on Insight Timer, which is a meditation app that I love and I use all the time. And it was a beautiful, beautiful talk about her relationship with fear all her life and how she had shame around feeling this fear because she was taught that she shouldn't feel this way and she should be okay and not talk about it and all this kind of stuff. And it was very profound for me. I started crying when I first heard it. I mean, it was so powerful because it was me. It was exactly, she was describing my life experience. I had anxiety at a very young age, and it continued on for a long time. And it happens still, you know, I'm a human, but it's much more manageable now with the techniques I learn and I share with my clients. Way, way, way better. So, and I had already been, it was a beautiful talk, and I had already been using this technique in meditation a lot with feeling emotions and letting them be more expressed. And I believe emotions are energy, and if they're not processed well, they get stuck. And so I have felt energy move in my body with meditation frequently, but I only felt that more in the last few years. It's been a really cool experience. And so I've done a lot of this with healing with emotion and fears. So when I heard her talk about this, I said, yes, this is absolutely true for me. And so I wanted to share with you my kind of evolution of how I learned how to process emotions better, and fear being my biggest one. When I was a child, like a lot of people, I was in a family that, you know, wasn't comfortable with talking about emotions. And I think my family was extreme, on the extreme end when I talked to some friends, because, you know, we just didn't talk about really serious life-changing things for members of the family, big stuff. And so anyway, the pink elephants on the sofa, nobody's talking about it. That's what I grew up with. Then as a young adult, I got into different self-improvement programs, and I learned a lot about looking at my fears and resentments and things that were ruling me and controlling me in my life. And where they came from, of course, it's always the past and childhood usually. And then learning how, okay, I look at it in a different way, and then maybe I would cry about it to let some emotion out. And then I thought I was done. Then I was like, okay, dealt with that. I'll think positive now. And every time it came up again or something, I would be like, no, think positive, you know. But I believe now that I didn't give it enough time to express itself and be heard and be able to heal and leave. And so it hung on. And so my next evolution was when I started meditating. And I was working through these kind of styles of meditation to help, you know, feel emotions, to let them come out more. But it was with an attitude of tolerance. It was this, okay, there you are again. I really don't like this, but I'm going to breathe really deep, and you're going to move through me. And it worked, but it was difficult, as you can imagine. But it did work, and it did help me a lot. And then I got educated more, practice, and I learned, okay, if I instead approach my meditation that I'm doing with this in a loving, compassionate way, and lean into that and go, okay, here you are again. How you doing? I love you. Tell me what you want. What are you trying to tell me? Let's work through this together, kind of thing. I mean, with that kind of an attitude, with just the feeling, the energy, the emotion, that it diminished much quicker, much quicker. It works so good. And so I knew that worked so good. And that's why when I heard her talk, talked about this, I was like, yes. And so I was really excited about, having this presentation, talking to you about this. So that has been my evolution. Pink elephant, look at it, but then be positive right away. Tolerance, and then now I'm into the embracing my fears with love and compassion. And it has been a life changer for me, for sure. And I'm still, working on it and getting better and improving all the time and sharing what I learn, with everybody, and, extra special care with my clients. But the thoughts that you talk to yourself and meditation, both of these are absolutely indispensable. How you talk to yourself, your thoughts are your reality. And if you have negative thoughts, you are not going to have a happy life. It just doesn't go hand in hand. If you want to have positive thoughts and focus on the positive, you'll have a happy life. Focus on the negative, not so happy. It's really quite simple, very cut and dry. I highly recommend reading anything and videos and stuff from people that are sharing the same message, because I absolutely believe that elevating your self-worth is through cultivating self-love and compassion in your life. And I would really love to talk to anyone in a breakout session. If you're interested in talking about these fear in general, embracing your fear, or maybe something else you have questions on that you're struggling with, or you want to share something with the group, I would love to talk to you guys. So thank you so much for your time and listening. I hope something I said really helped you and resonated with you, and that will help you in your personal development and or spiritual growth, whatever you're going after right now. Okay? So thanks again for listening, and namaste.